here. Big 12 schools are accusing other Big 12 schools of tampering and stealing their players. Looking at you once again, BYU and Utah, and a couple others. This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Utes crossover.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12, Locked On Utes crossover. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. JT Wistrcill of Locked On Utes, who talks all things Utes every day and doesn't like BYU, but will play objective when we talk about whether or not the Cougars are stealing from the Utes. We've seen major transfer portal news, negative news out of Iowa State, out of Colorado, out of multiple schools out of the Big 12 Conference. The most recent and the loudest, BYU trying to steal Utah's players. We'll start there. We'll also get to tampering is kind of a thing we have to accept. Remember when the SEC was paying players 10 years ago like Cam Newton and we just rolled over and let it happen? That might be how we have to accept tampering in the modern era of college football. And we'll finish with Utah wants to stay in the Big 12. These reporters, these burners on Twitter are all lying to you. Maybe JT will speak on that. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. JT, I try to steer away from BYU and Utah a lot because I understand that Cincinnati plays in this conference. Houston does, that UCF does. But it's like they dominate the headlines in the league because now all I see on my Twitter feed, all I see online when I look up Big 12 news, BYU fans defending their NIL and their transfer portal moves, and Utah fans accusing BYU of stealing players. Now, Utah's arguably wide receiver one is in the portal. Could he be a BYU Cougar? That's what a lot of Utah fans are asking. Was there tampering? Can you walk me through the feud that is reignited this week?
Yeah, and the first thing to know is it's not fans accusing them. It's the top Utah insiders who are saying they are actively hearing that BYU is trying to lure several of their players. Steve Bartle for KSL Sports said that right away, that he reported on X. He said, according to multiple sources, a few Utah players not in the portal have gotten offers to enter the portal. And if you look at Alex Markham's reporting on this of Utah Rivals, he said BYU is back at it. While they're not paying their own guys, they're walking in, they're choosing to target other players not in the portal. We also have Dan Sorensen of UteZone.com, who he said that the players that they are trying to actively land are Caleb Lomu, offensive tackle, Dallas Vakalaki, defensive tackle, and Smith Snowden. And we had heard a couple months ago from these same insiders that BYU was.
Those are all the most BYU Utah names of all time, by the way. That is no one else is going to target these kids in the portal because of their names. Continue, please.
Yeah, they are. And these are guys just like Smith Snowden was someone BYU tried to get in the portal last time. There were reports a couple months ago that BYU wanted to lure in Keanu Tanavasa, which they were able to do. Yep. And this is, once again, this is just what has been, this is what's been reported. And these reporters have a long track record of accurate reporting. So what I don't like doing is when they report something we don't like, then we get mad and say it's false when they have a history of accurate reporting. I disagree with that. And I see a lot of that online. And also I want to say this too, because we're talking about tampering everything. I believe BYU is not doing anything that everyone else isn't doing in college football. It's okay to admit that they're doing it because everyone is doing it one way or another. Now, there are more egregious examples than others, like how actively they seem to be trying to take players off Utah's roster. Obviously, that's concerning, but these two, they're called the team down south for a reason. Utah fans call BYU that. They are so close together. Provo is less than an hour away from Salt Lake City, maybe an hour if we're getting to traffic and things of that nature, but these teams are close together and they have good feel for who the top players are on each side. So they constantly try to go at each other and get the players. It's icky what's going on right now, but it's not like BYU is the only ones doing it. Once again, this is the world of college athletics, but yeah, it's really messy. And there's way too much noise around this from sources I trust for me to not say that this is something.
Yeah. That's the one part where I'm hung up as the objective guy. Look, I have rooted for Utah against Southern Utah. I've rooted for BYU against Southern Illinois. I've been at both of those games and been on both sides of the coin because that's the role of Locked On Big 12. Where I get hung up with this is kind of the same spot I've been hung up with BYU fans say that, oh, Utah is doing X, Y, Z. They're tampering, they're stealing, their coaching staff is being unfair. You know, they're making some nefarious moves. And you ask, how do you know that? They say, well, sources or a big reporter is saying that. It's still so hard for me without this tangible, here are the text messages, here are the phone calls, here are the screenshots. Without that, like, I'm struggling a bit to wrap my mind around it, and I know a lot of Utah fans are upset with this. I wonder how much the BYU rivalry plays into it. I feel like a lot, which could go unsaid. I'm struggling to grapple this without true evidence.
Okay, so the thing I would say to that then is, I mean, it seems like every coach in the country has had an issue with tampering at one point or another at late. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Dion, with it, yeah, most recent
Dion.
result is or example is Dion calling out Virginia.
There's all these coaches making noise about what's wrong with the portal and how players and coaches are actively trying to go at each other. And that's actually what makes it very interesting is the coaches elements of this is, I think not even the coaches, I should say, but the program element of this. I feel like, yes, people are calling each other out a little bit, but at the same time, like everyone's doing it a little bit. Everyone's kind of being shady about it. So that's what makes this so interesting and tough to enforce. But Drake, there's just way too much noise going on nationally about tampering for me to act like this doesn't exist. Because then we have situations like this. And I hate to bring this up again, but this is just the one that stands out to me so clearly. Keanu Tanavasa was a defensive tackle at Utah. He said, I'm going to stay at Utah, put out a video that he was going to stay, then shaded another player for saying he was going to stay at Utah and then leaving. And that player ended up at Alabama. Then Tanavasa ends up entering the portal too. So it's like, wait, what happened? Everything seemed fine. Then reports come out from credible sources that NIL was involved. How am I supposed to not say okay, well, that makes sense because everything I heard was he's really happy too. And Tanavasa has the right, and that's totally fine. He can make that decision. But it's hard for me not to see NIL at least being a part of this when these things come up too. And it's a very shady world of college sports right now where we have these tampering deals and things going on too. You have players that are happy one moment and then the very next they're entering it. And when we hear a lot of noise about the agents and the things they're doing, and there's just way too much conversation going on nationally about tampering and all of these things for me to say it's not happening. And I absolutely believe that BYU and Utah, this is an example of tampering. But once again, it's not something that not everyone else in the country is doing. So I'm not saying BYU is the only one doing this. They're just doing what everyone else is doing. But I have a hard time believing that they're not doing it when so clearly we have multiple sources now that are saying they are.
Is it Fano? Logan Fano?
Fano.
All right. Pause. Coming up. If everyone's doing it, should we just accept it? And what is the story with Logan Fano? This is Locked On Big 12 and Locked On Utes crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Why? Because Monarch Money has saved me a lot of money. Used to, I'd look at my account and say, where did it go? I mean, I'm 24. I don't really do the money thing. I don't do the tracking thing. I've struggled to know where it's all going. And then I realized, thanks to Monarch Money, my personal CFO, I was spending all of it on food delivery. So I just don't do that anymore because the budgeting app is a great accountability partner, a complete financial command center. You stop managing your money, start building wealth. When I used it, I got to track the categories in which I was spending too much. And instead of juggling multiple apps, just Monarch Money. All you need, track spending, finances, plan long-term goals, and you can collab with your partner smoother than ever, setting those goals and being on the same page. Take control. Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. That is at Monarch Money. JT, we have cleared here that everybody tampers. We've decided that every college, from Utah to BYU to everybody does it. So the Logan Fano conversation is where I want to start. He is an active player at BYU. And
he's at Utah.
He's an active player at Utah now,
yeah.
But I'm saying used to.
Okay, gotcha.
Long ago. Active player at BYU. A picture comes out from the 5th of the month where he is with the Utah coaching staff, where they had visited his home for his brother. They visit his home. They talk to his brother. The 6th, so he's an active BYU player at that point. The 6th, he enters the transfer portal, ends up at Utah after meeting with Kyle Whittingham. There are position coaches that had nothing to do with his brother and possibly more to do with Logan in that living room, which is, sure, they're valuable recruiters, but there's something fishy there with, man, what were those position coaches doing in the room? So if we say that, where I'm going with this, if we say that tampering's happening everywhere, everyone's doing it, why are Utah fans so mad at BYU? Why are BYU fans so mad at Utah? Why are Texas Tech fans so mad? Colorado fans so mad? If everyone's doing it, is it not just something we kind of accept?
Well, I really quick have to bring up the Fano instance being very
I'm excited
different
for your response to
because
that, by the way.
Fano didn't play at BYU his first year. He had a season-ending injury before he even started. I believe it was his ACL. So this is different than guys who are actually producing for Utah, and then BYU comes over and takes them over. So to me, there is a difference there. But I also,
I guess,
I mean, we're talking about a guy who played versus didn't play. So that's part of this. But I will say, Drake, I can't dispute, like, hey, that is shady when you have guys there like that. But it also, like, hey, if you want to go play with your brother, I see that example as well too, especially if things didn't go over great at BYU. Now, once again, if that's the BYU player's case and they transfer, not every BYU transfer, though, we've been screaming tampering. I didn't think any tampering was involved in Carson Ryan. He entered the portal right away. He didn't say anything about, like, I'm going to stay at Utah. That there is different examples of this. And then Ryan just ends up going to BYU. So there's different examples. The reason, okay, going back to the tampering, just because everyone's doing it doesn't make it right. It just means it's not going to get enforced. It's incredibly frustrating with tampering going on. BYU fans should be incredibly frustrated by what's happened to two of their top players, Taggart and then the receiver whose name I just escaped me a moment ago. Like, those guys entering the portal, I would be shocked if they're not being tampered with. They were a part of a really successful BYU team last year.
Are you trying to tick them off by forgetting Keelan Marion's name? The All-American. The All-American.
Utah, we got our own issues right now with the wide receiver who also just entered the portal. So that's what I got. That's what they're dealing with too, which is another example of tampering. It very much seems like, as soon as he left, he was fine in the spring game, but it seems like, okay, there's all these reports coming out, positive momentum. He's wide receiver 1. He should be really happy at Utah. And then all of a sudden he's on the move, and you hear reports of tampering there as well too. And it's like, okay, well, where there's smoke, there's fire there. The reason everyone should not be for tampering, and once again, this is not even a Utah BYU thing. This is a college football thing. Is tampering sucks. And a lot of things with the portal sucks. The thing we were all excited about with the transfer portal was players, Cam Ward going from, Washington State, but Washington State to Miami. That's a logical move, next step up, especially with what was happening to the Cougars last year, where they were falling out of the P4 ranks, unfortunately. We used to be P5. But to me, now you have guys jumping across conferences. You even have a school like a Miami where, like, Carson Beck's leaving Georgia to go to Miami. That's never what the transfer portal, at least the best version of what we thought it could be, was going to be for too. So it just feels really icky what this is all transformed into. I just don't like the fact that we have guys, there's not as much loyalty in college sports, which I think really sucks. And it's not, once again, this isn't even just a Utah BYU thing. I think this is a thing all the Big 12 schools can relate to.
Is there a solution? Can we feasibly come up with the solution where used to it was kind of no matter where you transferred, you were going to have to sit out a year? And I don't know if we can do that again, but it worked. We didn't pay players and it worked. I like that they do get paid. There should probably be a cap somewhere there, the same way there is.
Did you say didn't pay players? Didn't in the open you talk about some of the SEC schools and things of that nature, though, that in the past were?
Sure, no doubt. I mean, yeah, and Cam Newton's $100,000 in the bag man and all of that. And I think that now that's an even playing field. You're seeing schools like BYU who have very deep pockets taking advantage of that. And Texas Tech, and taking advantage to the point that, you know what? At the very least, if BYU, and I will say this on every show until I die, if BYU's coaching staff is not tampering, if Kalani Sitake, I can guarantee you Kalani Sitake is not in these kids' living room. He's not in a Utah player's living room. There's no way. But there's probably a BYU donor who gives money, who's like, man, I know that kid's uncle, and he's a stud, and he plays for Utah. So he calls the uncle and says, I'll make sure he gets $1 million if he goes to BYU. And then that's how a lot of these deals are done behind the scenes. That needs to be somehow mitigated.
I know.
There needs to be a way to police a lot of this, but what is the solution? We kind of accepted the SEC bagman thing, and the NCAA was like, we'll turn a blind eye. Who cares? We're not going to punish really anybody. But I don't know if there's a solution now that the cat is out of the bag.
I agree, and I think one of the biggest problems is why in the world should the top SEC and Big Ten schools want there to be a solution when they have the ability to bring in the best players, when they can get a Caleb Downs from Alabama to come to Ohio State? Why should they want to cap this? I think the only way you can get a solution is in the NFL. Like, there's fines for tampering. Now, yes, guys in free agency text a little bit back and forth. Like, it becomes legal for a free agent to sign, and he signs right away. Cause he just called the team and they worked out all the details in a minute, right? Like, that, we all know that's crap. But I think the only way we could ever do it is somehow, if the NCAA, which once again seems very hard to believe because I feel like the big dogs would just try and separate. The big dogs really throwing around their weight right now, considering they're trying to get college football ratings in the discussion point of how to get more teams in. So that's where this becomes very challenging to get them to buy in. But the solution would be all the teams sign this, you get a commissioner, and all the teams agree that, like, hey, like you have to sign something. We're not going to tamper anymore. There's fining. Like we'll report each other if there is reported tampering. You cut the agents out. I really don't like the agent thing. Like, I think this is something most people can agree on. I just don't like the agent thing. Like, if the guy's going to get an NIL deal, shouldn't he just be able to go and get that deal on his own? Why does he have to pay an agent to do it as well, too? It just seems kind of slimy in a way for an agent to come in and make money. So I'm just not a fan of that. But yeah, it feels like you could fix this if everyone was willing to buy in and get in line. But the problem with buying in and getting in line is it would level the playing field a little bit more, even with the drastic NIL resource difference. Because then you have guys who get hurt, and then it's like, oh, well, we have a guy get hurt now, so now we can go throw money at someone else on their roster and get them out of the portal. I mean, Cal's running back, Jaden Naughton, just Oklahoma just went up and bought him, and that was a wild thing. That's basically what all the reporting is saying. So it's really icky. I don't think you can get buy-in just because of how much control the top conferences have here, Drake. So I think it's really scary, but I wish that there was a way to, and hopefully they can try to figure something out. But the NCAA's got a lot of things going on in the courts too, so it just feels like this is only going to continue to get worse. And I'm curious to see, we have a situation now where Arkansas is trying to sue Nico's brother or not trying to sue, excuse me, but they're trying to like say, hey, you need to pay your buyout money if you're going to leave. So how is that going to go over? A lot of interesting wrinkles in all this.
I think so. The area which I am most torn, you have players like Ott going to Oklahoma to a better conference, or at least a better opportunity, a better school, a better, situation to make more money to build his draft stock. And I don't hate that part.
Agreed.
I don't hate that Cam Scatterbo got to go to from Sacramento State to Arizona State, which is a completely different thing, no doubt. But honestly, we're getting to the point where the gap between Sacramento State and Arizona State is fairly similar to the gap between Cal and Oklahoma. Like we are based on money.
What do you mean by Cal and like in terms of football? Like, I mean, we saw Cal almost beat Miami, right? Like
sure. Almost horseshoes and hand grenades. It counts close, counts great in those games. But
you say that, we say that about Arizona State and Texas, right? Like Arizona State should have won that game. So isn't that the same logic?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they're right there. They could compete with them on the field.
That's true. I mean, I don't value Cal as a football brand very much at all, but still, I think you hit the nail on the head there. You're right. There is, as much as I'd like to consider it being a better opportunity, a better conference, a better whatever for the kid. I mean, in the end, it's like, okay, well, it's only better because we've widened that gap. It's only better because that's how we pushed college football. Coming up, Utah staying in the Big 12. Was there a really bad typo on Twitter this week? This is Locked On Big 12 and Locked On Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. JT Wistrcill of Locked On Utes. I talked about this on my show this week, Utah going to the Big Ten. And it seems like every month or so, somebody posts something about this being inevitable. This time, the report said that it might even be close to a done deal or something that is going to happen. I believe there was a typo in the Jim Williams tweet where he said that this is going to be a thing where, so deducing from the typo that Utah might not be a done deal to the Big Ten. Do you think, well, let's start here. We've had this conversation a couple times. I want to differentiate it by asking a new opening question. Does Utah unequivocally, the Big Ten excluded from this, want to be in the Big 12?
It's a very complex situation, I think, right? Because it feels like there are
just say yes.
Here's the deal. I want Utah to be in the Big 12. I want to make that incredibly clear. You're asking me to speak for the university, and I do think right now they want to be there. Like I do believe that, but look, Mark Harlan made his comments. He can't take that back. That's not good. There was a lot of noise and rumors about Utah wanting to go to the Big Ten and not being left out. So yeah, I mean, if the Big Ten offer came, I do believe Utah would jump. Now, I've said this also. I think it would be, in a way, foolish for them to jump, but you almost have to just because you could double your revenue. Like the TV revenue is double in the Big Ten, even for what like Oregon and Washington aren't getting a full share. They're still making more than what the Big 12 school
yeah,
does.
that wouldn't double it because Utah would not get a full share of the Big Ten. So you wouldn't necessarily double your revenue. You would make more objectively in the Big Ten, though, based on the projected revenue. Definitely.
But I don't think they should want to go to the Big Ten because they could see their brand diminished, like what's happened with Nebraska, where everyone's like, kids are, I mean, a lot of guys our age, Drake, were like, what, Nebraska used to be a powerhouse? Like, we don't know what that is. Utah's Pac-12 titles, I mean, look, already went down here in the Big 12, but like, if you go into the Big Ten, What, Utah with a Big Ten title? That seems like a really tall task when you're competing with Ohio State and Oregon and Michigan in the NIL era with the talent they're bringing in. Utah could win the Big 12 this year. They were everyone's pick to win it last year. Reminder, not just Utah fans. A lot of the media thought Utah was going to win it because that roster on paper with Cam Rising and all those returning guys had a lot going for it too. So I want Utah to be in the best spot where they can compete for conference championships, not just where it's like, oh, cool, we're a Big Ten school. I can't stand when the Big Ten and SEC schools just claim the other team success and like, yay, this shows our conference is awesome. No, I want to be the one to control my team's success. I want to be the one, if I'm Utah, where I'm the one going into the playoff. I'm the one who's beating those other teams and not watching other Big Ten teams just be like, yeah, every year the same teams get in and they beat up on everyone. I think that's we're heading in a very dangerous direction. So if the Big Ten offer were to come, I think Utah would take it. And honestly, I think almost I really do think every member in the Big 12 would probably take it just from a financial standpoint. With the future of college football looking as it is, you want to be in the Big 10 and SEC if you can. But I think long-term, just like I've always thought when it comes to super conferences, it's bad for the sport.
Somewhere in there, you said that Utah would stay in the Big. I said take the Big 10 out of it, and you're like, kind of.
I wish they would. I really do, because I think it's the better place for them to compete.
If I close, I'm going to close the floor for a second, and then I'm going to open it right back up for you to just spew. I am speaking on behalf of what I heard from Utah fans, and I think on behalf of Utah fans, they felt as though a move from the Pac-12 to the Big 12 diminished their brand at least slightly.
Oh, is it all gate is open for me again? I was waiting for the official.
I'm going to open up like a small, the gate's kind of opening for you.
There was definitely Utah fans that felt that way. You were absolutely right based on the social media.
I think the administration probably was gunning for the Big Ten. I mean, I'm sure they would, like you said, they would accept this. I believe the rhetoric and a lot around it, Utah thought, hey, if we go to the Big 12, our brand's going to diminish a little bit compared to this Conference of Champions that saved us from, being at. Okay, I'll open the gate a little more because I was going to say this.
Utah was one of the top, like they were up there with Commissioner Kaliakov trying to keep the Pac-12 together. So I do think that was their priority, was to keep the Pac-12 together first and foremost. And then it became, oh, can we slip into the Big 10? Oh, we can't. Okay, cool. We'll get in with the Big 12. That's how it seemed to me.
But again, at the root of this, Utah felt, at least its fan base, that its brand was diminished in the Big 12 compared to the Pac-12. So understanding that, if your brand is diminished, even slightly, to the Big 12, then you go 11th in football, 14th in men's basketball, last in baseball. At that point, not very good at softball.
Gymnastics.
At that point, right, your brand is diminished. Then you go to the Big 12 and you fail in your first year in athletics. Your brand is even more diminished. I don't see, and I've had people in my comments like, well, don't forget what Utah has done historically. Yes, but so much of realignment is what have you done for me lately? Clemson's a massive brand for what they have done lately. Utah came into the Big 12 and couldn't hold weight. So it makes me wonder, why would the Big 10, they haven't held weight at all. I will say,
well, they've been right there with BYU. Like they're right there in all those football games, right? Every game was a game in the fourth quarter. So I feel like
but one team won 11 games, one team won 5. We can't pull that away.
Yes,
one team had a top 15 finish, the other.
Oh wait, no. Yeah, I agree with that fully. I'm just saying. We can't read completely into 1 year, right? This is a multi-year thing. Success. Sure. Oklahoma State just going to be dormant forever now.
Sure, I agree. I agree with that. It's just.
I think there's a difference between Utah and Cincinnati, and I'm sorry to any Cincinnati fan that's listening to this right now.
And you know what? Yeah, one is the primary state school of it's the biggest show in town. Cincinnati is in Ohio. Ohio State is Utah. You
call Utah the biggest show in town in Utah? Oh, I like the way that's
the biggest show in Salt Lake City. So I agree. I agree with that. I'm just what I'm struggling with is you're already diminishing your brand a bit by going to the Big 12.
I agree.
Then you're diminishing it further by losing in the Big 12. I don't see how a move to the Big 10, how you won't become an Illinois, a Maryland, even most years, an Indiana, a Minnesota. Utah would just fall in line, and Arkansas, a Mississippi State, a Texas A&M, where you're in the middle of the pack going, we're relevant. Yeah. And you're just not. If your brand is already diminished and you diminished it more by not winning in the diminished conference, I don't know what you could do in the Big 10.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. I mean, UCLA, Drake, doesn't it feel like their brand is already taken a hit? UCLA or USC, I feel like we'll be fine eventually. We'll see, maybe Lincoln had it down here, but like UCLA already took a hit. Washington, to me, man, does that feel like a program a long way removed from a national championship game, and it wasn't even 2 years ago. Like, it just that quickly, their brand took a hit. You mentioned some of those other ones too, even though obviously Indiana's brand, Illinois' brand.
Which again, I'm sorry, I know I should close myself here. For Washington, again, it's what have you done for me lately? Like, yes. we how quickly we forget. Utah was good at football 2 years ago. Like, elite at football 2 years ago. So was Washington. But one bad year, in the case of Washington, in the case of Utah, can really taint that.
It can. I brought up recently on one of our Big 12 squad shows, right? Like, which team in the Big 12 most recently won back-to-back conference champions? The answer to that is Utah. But understandably, from you guys' perspective, well, you didn't do that against us, so that doesn't matter. And I think that's a fair reaction to have, even though I think Utah deserves credit for winning back-to-back Pac-12 championships, especially beating some of those now Big 10 brands. But we do live in a what have you done for me lately conference. Utah has been not where they were for the past 3 years as well, too. So, yeah, I don't think a move to the Big 10 in terms of Utah's on-field football success is for the best of Utah. But if it comes down to, hey, super conference or not, then yeah, obviously Utah would have to go. Every Big 12 team in that situation would have to go. But yeah, I do think that Utah, if they had gotten lumped in with the Big 10, I think their brand would already be being diminished. And then bowl games become your like Super Bowl, and like, hey, how good of a bowl game can we get into? I mean, Minnesota got into the Duke's Mayo Bowl, and Flavor Flav is dumping mayonnaise on PJ Fleck. I love the Gophers, but is that as good as it's going to get? Like, that's a tough reality if you're Utah. So I think that's why it's better for them to be in the Big 12. And I'll even say myself, at the time, I wanted Utah to get in the Big 10 too, compete with the best. But there's also a saying, be careful what you wish for. And I think long-term wise, Utah is better off in the Big 12 because it allows them to compete. Drake, I don't think they're going to finish outside the top 10 frequently in this conference. When you look at how bad the quarterback play was last year, could it happen? Absolutely. Look at the top of the conference last year: Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Utah, all towards the bottom. And then we had all these other teams rise up. But this conference is never chalk. And there's a lot of reasons to believe that Utah is one of the teams that could bounce right back up. And they can bounce back up because they're in a great, unpredictable conference like the Big 12. And yes, I hope someone clips that for me. And not a conference like the Big 10 where you can bet on the same three teams to win it every year.
Yep. Devin Dampier, good thing he can run. Good thing he can run because he has no one to throw to.
Yeah, it's some nice throws. But yeah, we're
running out of guys. He's running out of guys to throw it to. JT, where can more folks find your work?
You guys can head over to Locked On Utes on YouTube Monday through Friday. Also on the squad shows as well with my good friend Drake Toll, and on my social accounts as well at JT Wistrcill on X, and Locked On Utes on X is also there too. Drake, always fun.
JT and I are hanging out this weekend at the Savannah Bananas versus the Party Animals game in Clemson, South Carolina. 81,000 people. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. A crossover with Utes and Dose Grande.